Well, this is a special experiment for the PFT PM podcast. Who knows how long it's actually going to last? We're going to try it for today. I'm down in the barn, and it's actually kind of cold in the barn. I have a crackling fire in the background. You may hear it. You can't see it because it's behind the camera. But this is where I hang out every other night or thereabouts to get away from the craziness that we've all been dealing with during this pandemic. So I figured I'd bring you down here for today's edition of PFT PM. We're going to try to keep it simple today, though. This is the first time that we're doing the PFT PM podcast from the barn. Had some minor technical issues to get ironed out, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe this will become a new staple of the PFT experience, and maybe we'll try different shots so you can see different parts of the barn. There isn't much you can see right now. This is one of the main seats to sit and enjoy the 4 TV screens that are up on the wall. I've got my sidecar here where I'll keep an ashtray, a cigar, a beverage. I got some awesome Kiss coasters. If you see that, that's the first Kiss album, if you're not familiar with that. I've got like 12 to 15 of these Kiss coasters that have they have had plenty of wear and tear. Here, Rock and Roll Over, awesome cover art, if you recall that album, or if you've ever seen it before, or if you're young, you have no idea what I'm talking about. All right, so let's get right to it then. Let's go ahead and do what we always do on a Friday PFT PM, answer some of your questions. I got my little mobile laptop down here. I got some PFT stickers. I need to put one on that thing, although free advertising for Apple. Hey, Apple, you want a podcast sponsorship? Here, there's your big Apple. See that? Pay me. All right, time for some of your questions. PFT PM Posse, what do you think about playing games with no fans and the NFL offering fans the ability to interact and support one of the teams online, allow fans to earn by tokens that can be redeemed strategically during the game to increase fake crowd noise piped in by the league? That's a question that comes via Josh the Blaze. I like the creativity. I don't see it ever happening. I think that what we're going to have to accept is when they play these games with no fans, if that's how it plays out, and it will not surprise me at all if that's what happens until there's a vaccine. I can't imagine stadiums full of fans or stadiums with any fans. I mean, maybe they can have very limited fan presence. Maybe you can have people who are screened ahead of time as being virus-free. Maybe they sit in the suites, but can you really imagine 70,000 people crammed together like they used to be? I don't think that's going to happen. George Kittle pointed out during the interview earlier, if you were listening to it, that even though they're giving up home field advantage at Levi's Stadium, he's happy to go to places like Seattle and not have home field advantage for the home team there, not have to go silent count, not have to strain to hear what's going on when they're trying to run their offense. So it balances out. It's a different reality. There will be no home field advantage per se for any teams. So really, the teams that don't have home field advantage will be the ones that get the advantage, like the Chargers, right? They never have a home field advantage, so it evens out that way. Any team that plays well on the road, any team that doesn't have that deafening crowd at home, that team is going to be better off than the teams that maybe rely upon that noise, that energy to get them going when they are playing games at home. And for teams like Seattle, that are known for having that incredible home field advantage from crowd noise, they're going to have to find other ways to win their home games because they're going to be able to wipe that 12 off the board during these games that go without fans, if that's how it all plays out. And look, let me just say this. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Anybody who tells you they know what's going to happen is either stupid or lying or a little bit or a lot of both. I think the best thing to say about any type of football, high school, college, pro, we just don't know. And the virus is going to set the timeline. And anybody who's suggesting that college football has a strong conviction, there was the report from Sheffy yesterday, people in and around college football have a strong conviction there's going to be games. I don't care. The virus sets the schedule. And the best thing to say isn't we plan to play. The best thing to say is we're planning for everything. And we have a plan for whatever happens. And ultimately, the virus is going to set the schedule. All right, let's see what we have now here. PFT PM Posse, it's my wife's birthday today. What are some of your best birthday memories with your wife and of your wife's birthday? Well, look, I don't know. I'd have to sit and really think about it because I'm an adult. And once you're an adult, the birthday isn't as big of a deal as it once was. Other holidays, yes. Birthday, what does Jerry Seinfeld say in the episode where he's trying not to be funny because George is concerned that the girl that he's met will think Jerry is funny and then like Jerry better than George? Birthdays are a reminder that we're another year older and we're another year closer to our demise. And also, we've spent another 365 days on the planet, not getting any closer to the things that we're trying to do. So birthdays suck is basically what I'm saying. And I say that as somebody who has a birthday coming up in fewer than 2 months. And I don't want a happy birthday. I just want to move past my birthday and on to the next day. So happy birthday, PFT PM Posse's wife. Next question. Delete Rao, a.k.a. at Leapers500. How do we deal with the reflexive politicization of everything that happens? We seem to be unable to process data in any other algorithm. We can't hold folks accountable. Do right and work hard if everything is first about opposing your enemies. Probably one that I shouldn't have read because everyone wants me to stick to football, except when they agree with me. See, that's how it works. If I talk about something from a political perspective that you agree with, you're fine with it. If it comes from a perspective you disagree with, I should stick to football. And this is kind of where we are right now. Even as we deal with this pandemic, we've got red state, blue state. We've got one corner, we've got the other corner, and everyone's processing their information, taking the news through the prism of what they believe, which is asinine, if you ask me. We should be deferring to the experts. We should be accepting what the experts have to say. But one of the realities here, and I'm trying to be apolitical as I say this, one of the realities of having leaders that try to tear down every institution that we have relied upon in the past, when the time comes to rely upon those institutions for information that may save our lives, we're inclined not to listen to those institutions. And that's probably all I should say about that for now. What else do we have? How about this? Another one from Leapers 500. Is Cam Newton in danger of not finding a seat in the mad musical chairs of this particular dance? I don't know that he doesn't find a seat. I just think that he may have to wait. Now, if he could get a physical right now, a team like the Chargers would presumably bring him in right now to give him a full physical, see how the foot's doing, see how the ankle's doing, see how the shoulder is doing. Remember last year he was breaking in a new throwing motion at or about the time that he injured his foot. So there are multiple concerns when it comes to checking out the health of Cam Newton. But given where we are right now, no one has the opportunity to have their doctors give Cam a physical, so everybody has to wait. And weight may be the key for Cam Newton and also a guy like Jameis Winston. Peter King and I were talking about this today. Because this is going to be such a crazy season, and because when it's time to get back to football, it could be some guys maybe aren't in the kind of shape they need to be in. Maybe they break down. Maybe they get injured. If you're Jameis Winston or Cam Newton and the only opportunities out there to go be someone's backup, maybe you just wait for somebody to get injured, the phone to ring, and you have the opportunity to walk right in and be the starter. Look what happened last year. If Cam Newton or Jameis Winston were available to the Pittsburgh Steelers come week 2 of the 2019 season, do you not call Cam Newton or Jameis Winston in lieu of handing the ball to Mason Rudolph? Now, the problem is a lot of teams will say, we're going to go next man up. We're going to go with the guy who knows the offense. But this year, that gap isn't going to be as big between the stranger who may be more physically gifted and the guy who's on the inside who knows the offense, because everything's going to be truncated. What you know about the offense is going to be less extensive than what you would know in other years. So it very well may be that the best play for Cam Newton is to wait. I personally think that a team like the Chargers or even the Dolphins need to pounce on Cam Newton ASAP, even without the ability to give him a physical, because based on the videos I've seen online, he looks fine to me. Now, I understand you may be taking a risk there, and maybe you structure the contract to protect you against that risk. But at the same time, this guy, when healthy, is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Have we forgotten that? He was the MVP of the league in 2015. Have we forgotten that? Have we forgotten what a force he is, how big and strong and mobile and fast and everything we're looking for in a quarterback? And yes, that brings along the risk of injury. But at the same time, if he stays healthy, you're going to have a better team. If he stays healthy, you're going to have a better quarterback. Better than Tyrod Taylor for the Chargers, better than Ryan Fitzpatrick for the Dolphins. And I think those are the two teams to keep an eye on, unless and until there's an injury that is suffered. And look, remember, the quarterbacks out there aren't going to sit around and watch bowling and eat pork rinds. They're going to be working out, and they're going to be working out in places that aren't their team facilities. And you never know what's going to happen. You find a high school field, there's a rock somewhere that you step on, there's a divot in the field, just some fluke thing happens, step on a sprinkler, whatever the case may be. As guys work out on their own, and surely they will, there's a chance somebody's going to get injured. And that risk is going to be there throughout this crazy time where teams can't get together at their own facilities. All the more reason to maybe wait if you're Cam Newton and Jameis Winston for that injury to happen and maybe the door to open. Leapers 500 has one more before we move on to others. Why does Brandin Cooks keep getting shipped around like a side of beef? Is it that he's just good enough to want but not good enough to play out of his salary? Good for him either way. Yeah, this is a guy who was the 20th overall pick, I believe, in 2014 by the Saints. 2017, traded for a first-round pick to the Patriots. 2018, traded for a first-round pick to the Rams, who immediately signed him sight unseen to a big money contract and paid him $40.54 million for only 2 years of service. First year, 1,200 receiving yards. First year, wide in the third quarter of the Super Bowl with the Rams down 3-0, and Jared Goff held on to the ball for too long and didn't get it there accurately enough for Cooks to make the play. The ball was broken up by, I think, Jason McCourty. It was one of the McCourtys. I think it was Jason McCourty. But then last year, less than 600 yards receiving for Brandin Cooks, missed a couple of games with his fourth concussion since Super Bowl 52. Remember, Super Bowl 52, he took that wicked headshot from Malcolm Jenkins while Cooks was still playing for the Patriots. Jenkins, obviously, with the Eagles at the time. 4 concussions since that one. So that one plus 3 others I can count. And that's another reason to be concerned. So I personally think that at some level, Bill O'Brien, reacting to the very intense criticism of the decision to trade DeAndre Hopkins, criticism from fans, from media, maybe some blowback from the team, some frustration from quarterback Deshaun Watson to the point where people are speculating that come 2021, Watson won't even be with the Texans anymore. Maybe this move was about getting people off of Bill O'Brien's back, the fans, the media, and Watson. Whereas the reality is this, and this is a great point Peter King made today on PFT Live. With that 57th overall pick in the draft that the Texans gave up to get Cooks, you could get a pretty good receiver this year. Eric DeCosta, the Ravens GM, said Thursday he thinks in round 5 you can find a starting receiver. That's how deep this class is. So you give up pick number 57 for Cooks. That pick may end up turning out to be a much better receiver and a guy that you're going to have cheaper and a guy that comes in with a clean bill of health without the injury history, without the concussion problem. And it could be that there'll be a backfire. There'll be a boomerang. There'll be people like me 2 weeks from tonight who see who's there at pick number 57, which receivers the Texans could have had. And it makes it worse if the Rams take a receiver with that 57th pick, because then it's set up apples to apples, Cooks versus whoever the Rams take with the pick they got from Bill O'Brien. Risky move by the Texans, to say the least. An expensive move by the Rams. They had to pay a $4 million roster bonus just to hold on to Cooks beyond the 30th day of March. Actually, it was earned probably the third day of the league year, but it was payable the end of March. Either way, $4 million out just to hang on to Cooks long enough to get that 57th overall pick in the draft. And as I mentioned, $40.54 million for 2 years of Cooks services. That's over $20 million a year. And all due respect to Cooks, he did not play like a $20 million a year receiver. Terry Gensler wants to know if we can get a not sticking to football segment at the end. I already kind of strayed in that direction. I'll have a few things to say about what's going on in the world before we wrap this thing up. A Red Zone Out, otherwise known as Tom Marshall, a good friend of ours from across the Atlantic Ocean. How will players who have earnings tied to off-season workouts be paid? There's roughly $36 million in off-season workout bonuses out there for veteran players. This typically isn't a facet of the rookie contract. It becomes very common in veteran deals. Mike Garafolo had a breakdown last week of who makes what. Zadarius Smith and the Packers, I think $750,000 for workout bonuses. Last I heard, the league and the union continuing to figure out what it's going to take to qualify for those workout bonuses. I was told over the weekend that the NFL wants, beyond the participation in meetings via technologies like Zoom, which is how we're doing this today from the barn, they're going to want guys to wear heart monitors when they work out. They're going to want Zoom monitoring and supervision of their workouts so they can check the box and know that the guys are doing what they have to do. But some guys just don't have the equipment. What are they going to do? Spend $10,000 to go out and buy the stuff so they can have a gym at their homes? Some guys live in condos or apartments where it's almost impossible to do that. So it's going to be a challenge to get guys in a position where they can earn the money and Some guys may just not be able to do it. Whose fault is it then? How are they supposed to anticipate that they're going to need to have the equipment in their home necessary to do what they're supposed to do? But I think it's going to be driven by individual determinations of what guys need to do, what guys are capable of doing. And it's not going to be the easiest thing to draw the motivation to do. We asked George Kittle about that earlier. For him, he'll wake up in the morning and run through a wall no matter what, because he knows it's going to make him better at football, and he loves football, so he'll do whatever it takes to be good at football. Not everybody's like George Kittle. There's plenty of people who are going to have a hard time finding the motivation necessary to do what needs to be done. So that is something that needs to be considered as they determine how players will earn their workout bonuses. Maximum overdrive, or more accurately, Maximus overdrive. Will there be another attempt at the Spring Football League? They all have failed some way, somehow. Is there a formula for success? Well, I don't know. Going into the XFL season, my take was no matter how much I try to make myself care about spring football, I don't. I just don't. I can't get excited about spring football. I don't care about spring football. I try to, but I don't. Now, I watched the XFL every weekend that it was on. I watched the AAF last year every weekend that it was on. It's on TV. It's great background noise while I'm working out, or not working out, but working out. I was doing it while doing both. I just kept it on during that 6-hour window on Saturdays and Sundays. I didn't see all of it, but I saw plenty of it. And I'll watch it if it's on. And people were watching it. Now, the ratings started high, and we saw them slide down as the season went on. And who knows what was going to happen with the XFL ratings once they got up against the NCAA Men's Conference Championship weekend, against the first weekend of March Madness, the second weekend, the third weekend, etc. Those numbers, I think, we're going to keep dropping. Baseball returns, numbers keep dropping. So I think it's going to be a challenge to get a sustained audience. The question is how much, wherever the floor is, how much does it take to justify the endeavor? And the key is going to be legalized gambling, people taking to spring football as a way to provide the platform for betting. But the pandemic, I think, sets the clock back on all of that for several years. I think the economy is going to have to get back to normal. The sports betting industry is going to have to recover from what's happened this year. And once that happens, maybe there's an opening for spring football. And look, I'm not saying I endorse this, but one of the things I've been saying for the past few years, I think there is an appetite and a thirst for old school football, for football like they used to play in the 80s and 90s. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to YouTube and pull up any of the games from the 80s and the 90s that are available there for you to watch. And if you really want to see old school, go back to the 70s. There's a clip floating around of Mel Blount, I believe, lifting Cliff Branch off the ground and basically pile driving him. And it is so violent. It is so stunning to see, especially in light of today's standards for football. What makes it even more stunning, right after the pile drive, an official walks into the frame very nonchalantly, like, hey, that happens all the time, no big deal. So I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying it's right. But what I'm saying is, if there's somebody out there who's willing to spend the money, willing to take the chance, willing to draw up all the agreements in a way that the waivers are in place and everybody signs off on what they're getting into, a football league that brings back football the way it used to be can find an audience and can make money, just like UFC does. If you've ever watched UFC, it is shockingly brutal. And I think UFC would be shut down if as many people watch that as watch the NFL. And so, if it's almost like an alternative football league that is old school, if it just was kind of a niche thing that the people who would be flabbergasted by it never really pay attention to, it could survive, it could thrive, and I think it could find an audience and it could be successful. But I think that is the only way to make spring football work. Giving that fan base, giving those people out there who are looking for football the way it used to be played, and there are plenty of people out there who feel that way. You're giving them that product, even if it's not during football season. All right, let's see what else we have here. Tyler Furness, with the draft being virtual, would you recommend that the time for each selection go up to 15 minutes to better allow for trades and to ensure we don't get clock fiascos? Look, I said this on PFT Live this week. I mean, it's the ultimate captive audience, right? Where are we going on the first night of the draft? Where are we going on the second night of the draft? So what if it's a little bit longer? Go back to 15 minutes. Now, here's the thing. If you don't start it until 8 o'clock, I remember those first rounds back when they did 15 minutes taking like 6 hours. So they do need to move it along from the standpoint of having a TV show that people will watch. But look, I don't have a problem with more time. I just don't like the concern. I feel like the concern about technological issues is overblown. And I don't want to say it's phony. I just think a lot of people are confused. A lot of people are leery. And that's fine. You're used to being in a room with everyone you know and everything you need. And now you're relying upon technology to fill those gaps. I can understand why there's some hesitation. But I think if they do a dry run, they're going to do a mock draft. I think people will get a better feel for what it's going to take to get their picks in on time and to understand it's different, but it's not impossible to figure out how to do it. And there are redundancies in place to prevent any type of a potential debacle that would screw up a team's opportunity to get the player that they want. All right, let's see what else we have here. El Marco lives. Where's Jameis going to end up? Stick it out until a starter gets injured in preseason. That's exactly what we were saying earlier. Wait for somebody to start. If you think you're a starter and no one's offering you a starter job, then you just wait. Now, you're taking the chance that no one's going to get injured, that no one's going to call, or if someone does get injured, they're going to treat you like they treat Colin Kaepernick and just look for someone else. But this guy threw 5,109 yards last year, 8th highest all time. Only 4 human beings have thrown for more yards in a season than Jameis Winston has done, because some of them have done it multiple times. Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, not bad company. And when you look at the list of the all-time top single-season passing yard performances, start looking at those names. There's a lot of Hall of Famers in that list. There's a lot of guys who have gone on to do great, great things once they've checked the box on a 5,000-yard season, which is what Jameis Winston did. And yes, he also checked the box on a 30-interception season. That's the problem. But I think that teams could do a hell of a lot worse than Jameis Winston. And if an injury happens, I think he's a guy you bring in. And, Sims and I are all over the idea of the 49ers bringing in Jameis Winston, because we both agree that in Kyle Shanahan's system, it's very simplified, it's very basic, and you just go A, B, C, D through the steps of what Shanahan wants you to do. There isn't a whole lot of quarterback independent thought in there. That may make it less likely that Jameis Winston has one of those moments where he almost has an out-of-body experience where he tries to do more than he's physically capable of doing. So I think that makes a ton of sense. All right, let's see what else we have here. Scrolling. Sources from New Era Cap and Lids have told me there is a new Raiders logo that will be revealed at the draft. Anything you can add? Don't have much besides them saying we were told not to reveal until the pick is in. I haven't heard anything about a new Raiders logo. The Raiders logo is one of the most classic and iconic in the NFL. Now, maybe there's some way they've worked in the word Vegas to the logo, but with all these teams changing uniforms, and this is where Chris Sims would chide me for being an old man, I like the classic looks. I like the block numbers. I like the old uniforms. I like the Packers. I like the Raiders. I like the Cowboys. I like the uniforms that stand the test of time. Look at the Colts. Very basic, but they never change, right? Block numbers, white and blue, and nothing fancy. And I knew the moment Nike got involved, because we saw what Nike was doing in college football. The moment Nike got involved with NFL uniforms, we were going to see this revolving door. Teams with new uniforms every 2 or 3 years. The Browns, it seems like they have new uniforms every few years. And the Falcons have bounced around with different uniforms. And the Jaguars with different uniforms. And now the Buccaneers have had 2 uniforms since Nike took over. And look, there's a strong financial incentive to have new uniforms, because then people go out and buy the new jerseys. But I'm a fan of keeping it. If it works, if you have a look that works, like the Chiefs going to change their uniforms? Hell no. If you have a look that works, you keep it. Keep it year to year. That's part of what fans identify with. And I'd be disappointed if the Raiders change their logo, because they have one of the best ones in all of sport. Dean Osborne 42. Here's a football question. Somewhere in the world you haven't visited yet, but really want to go to one day. Well, you know what? We were in the process of planning a trip to London and then to Italy this spring and summer. That ain't happening. And who knows when that's going to happen. Hopefully it happens at some point in the next 5 years. We really want to get over to London to visit with our fans there. The folks who have enjoyed PFT Live on Sky Sports have been very antsy and very anxious over the past month or so while we've been off. If you haven't heard, we're back as of Thursday, live local time, 12 to 2 p.m. That's in London, UK, and Ireland, We'd love to go visit our friends there. And I'm from Italy. My folks are from Italy, kind of. They're first generation. Neither were born in Italy, but their parents were. So it's close enough. I'm second generation. And I kind of know where I want to go, the places I want to see, the places where my people are from. And we've been talking about doing it, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. All right. What else do we have here? Dean Osborne, 42. Does Tom Brady's boring interview with Howard Stern mean no possibility of an announcing gig should he want it when his playing days are over, since he can't be trusted to be candid or say anything much of interest? I think he opened up more than he ever did and ever will with Howard Stern. And I think whether or not you're candid during an interview is different from whether or not you're going to be insightful or interesting if you're a broadcaster. There's been no reason to think Tom Brady wants to do it, but when the money that's being thrown around is getting up toward $20 million per year, I don't know, maybe Brady gives it a try. But remember this, Brady's idol, Joe Montana, sucked. All due respect, Joe, we love you as a football player. You were not good as a broadcaster. And his coach, Bill Walsh, rest in peace, Bill Walsh was not good as a broadcaster either. So just because you're a genius, just because you're a great quarterback, it doesn't mean you're going to be a great broadcaster. I think Peyton Manning definitely will be when he decides to do it. I'm not sold on whether or not Tom Brady has the chops to do it, and I'm not sold on whether or not he has the desire to do it. He wants to go all in with that TB12 project at some point. I saw today that they're going to open a location in Tampa. Gee, there's a shock. New York, LA. He's in the process of expanding that brand. But here's the thing. If you have a big platform with an NFL broadcast, that's a way to keep people coming to the TB12 facility. So who knows? Maybe that's something that Tom Brady will do if and when he retires from the NFL. And I should say when, but with him, hell, you got to say if, because you never know if he's actually going to retire or if he's just going to keep playing as long as he possibly can. Scrolling through here to see what else we have. Nets Jets fan has a question about OTAs and off-season workouts, but also games. So it's a broader question that we haven't addressed earlier. Will the NFL be responsible for paying players for canceled OTAs and or games? Look, I saw something from Ben Volman of the Boston Globe that suggested if there's no games, players won't be paid. And he pointed to the fact that the NFL CBA doesn't have what they call a force majeure clause. If anything, the absence of a force majeure clause in the NFL CBA would require the league to pay the players if there are no games. We wrote something about that a few weeks ago. The NBA talking about not paying players. The NBA has, in its collective bargaining agreement, a force majeure clause, an act of God clause, a clause that says in the event of an epidemic, if we can't play, we don't pay you. The NBA has that. The NFL does not, either in the CBA or in the standard player contract. There is nothing there that says if some act of God, if some weather emergency, if there is war, if there is pandemic or epidemic, we don't pay you if we can't play the games. That's just not there. So and the NFL is never going to agree to this. The NFL will fight this because there's too much money at stake. And I had one source tell me that the league's position would be if they play no games, they don't have to pay the players anything. If they play even one game, they have to pay the players everything, which makes no sense to me. But again, I understand why the league would be trying to stake out something like that, where their position is if we don't play, you don't get paid, because they're going to want the union to go along with whatever efforts are identified to play the games, because that's the union's leverage, right? The union can sit back and say, we get paid if we don't play. So you have to figure out a way that we're going to play that we're happy with and we're comfortable with. And if we don't like it, we're not going to agree to it. If we don't like the idea that you're going to take everybody to some remote facility and we're all going to live there for 4 months, no, we're not going to do that. If you want us to do it, you need to make another concession. And you can't just say, these are the rules. This is how we're going to play. And if you don't show up and play, you don't get paid. The union's going to have to be on board with this. And I think the union has a much stronger position than people realize, because there's the donut hole in the CBA and the standard player contract that does not allow the league to say to the players, sorry, no games, no pay. That's something to keep an eye on. And let me tell you, that makes it all the more likely the NFL identifies a way to play these games, even if the stadiums are empty. The NFL is going to do what it has to do, because if the NFL has to pay these players to not, if they have to pay the players to not play, I knew I'd get there eventually. If they have to pay the players to not play, you're going to bankrupt some of these teams. That's all the money going out, no money coming in. And that's the other thing to keep in mind, too. What the hell is this season going to do to the salary cap next year? Because the salary cap in any given year is the product of the revenue from the prior year. If the revenue just disappears this year, or if the ticket revenue is gone, but the TV revenue is there, it's going to reduce what's available. And you're going to have salary caps that plummet next year. And you got contracts that are premised on, a salary cap that keeps growing and growing and growing. What kind of moves are teams going to have to make to save cap space next season? They got to cut some big name players or renegotiate some contracts. And they'll wish that they had contracts that were tied to cap percentages. That's something I've been advocating for years for star players, under the assumption that the cap was going to keep going up and up and up. And because of that assumption, teams didn't want to do it. They're going to be wishing they had done it if the cap goes down the way that it could next year. But all the more reason to find a way to play the games. And if there isn't college football, if there isn't high school football, it's all the more reason for the NFL to find a way to broaden its weekend from Thursday to Sunday to Monday, to throw in Friday night and 3 windows on Saturday. Because if we're at the point where fans can't be in the stands, if we're at the point where high school football doesn't get played, if we're at the point where college football can't be played, that means that we're going to be home a lot in the fall. And that means that people will flock to those windows, as we have a Friday night game, a Saturday at 1 o'clock Eastern game, a Saturday at 4:25 Eastern game, a Saturday night game. Do it again Sunday, Monday night. I mean, that's going to become the anchor of the week for most sports fans. That's going to be it if that's what happens. Now, other sports may start popping up again with no fans, but who knows? The NFL, I believe, is going to move heaven and earth to play its games, and maybe can backfill the vacancies created by no high school football, no college football. We'll see how that all plays out. All right, just scrolling through here to see if there's anything else that here's a question from Bra26, who Bra26 apparently hasn't been paying attention to what's been going on with our radio show or non-radio show. Wants to know, is the NBC Sports Radio app no more? I've been trying to listen live the last 2 weeks and get nothing. Yeah, what happened is, as of March 31, Westwood One, which operated NBC Sports Radio. NBC Sports Radio wasn't something that NBC Sports Radio ran. NBC Sports essentially licensed the name to Westwood One, which created the network and distributed the content. And Westwood One decided March 31 that it was no longer going to televise, or not televise, radio ties. I'm sounding like Sims now. No longer broadcast the network. And that decision was made before the pandemic. This is not a pandemic decision. This is early March, March 2nd. I got the phone call from Jack Silver with Westwood One, who informed me that the radio network was going to go silent on March 31. And that's what they decided to do. So what's happened with us, we still are on NBCSN with a very different clock. The radio clock, very restrictive, a couple of hard outs every hour, more break time. And it created some clunky things on TV where we take a break, we come back for like a minute, and then have another break, and then come back for a radio and TV segment, then take another break, and have a TV segment. Now it's just TV segments across the board. The show is on Sirius XM 211. It's on the TuneIn app, and also you can get the podcast as well. So that is the reason why the NBC Sports Radio app is no longer working, which tells me I need to do a better job of getting the word out. We thought everybody knew, but apparently not everyone is aware of that. All right, that's it. It's 4:20 p.m., by the way, Eastern. So go ahead and do what you do at 4:20. But before we go, look, it's been a long 5 or 6 weeks for everyone. And I remember sitting in this chair 5 weeks ago tonight and watching the news. And that was the day that the president was at the CDC in Atlanta. And I just remember getting the sense, watching his comments, having it all sink in, understanding how this ball, and it doesn't take, I think, a genius to see where the ball was moving and where this was all going. I remember 5 weeks ago tonight just being as down in the dumps as I've been in a very long time, because I knew what was coming. And we've seen it come over the last 5 weeks. Now, there's reason to believe it's not going to be as bad as we thought because we reacted the way we did with the extreme measures to keep people at home. And I fully expect that at some point, the COVID truthers out there will say, see, it was no big deal. We shouldn't have done everything we did. Well, the reason it wasn't as big of a deal as it was going to be is because people did the things they were supposed to do. And I hope people were smart enough to figure that out. But at this point in our existence, I'm not ready to assume anyone is smart enough to figure out anything that would cause them to deviate from their predetermined and pre-existing beliefs. All that said, it has been a long road for all of us. And I think all we can do is just keep going. I've used this example over and over again. We are climbing a mountain. We have no idea where the top of the mountain is. So all we can do is focus on each additional move, right? Every day, you move your hand a little bit higher. You bring your foot up a little bit higher, and you just hope you don't fall off the mountain while you're trying to climb to the top of the thing, wherever the top may be. And we have some ideas of where the top is going to be, and it may be that we kind of reach a shelf that isn't quite the top, but then we keep climbing. And then maybe we reach another plateau, but then we keep climbing. And that's the thing we have to keep in mind. There will be moments where we allow ourselves to think, hey, it's over. We're back to normal. That's the worst thing we can do. It's not back to normal until there's a vaccine. And the Spanish flu of 1918, it was the third wave that killed the most people. And can't we already see that happening? A lot of Americans who maybe haven't been following this as closely as they should, who maybe don't understand it as well as they should, who haven't had to touch their lives yet, who are kind of, I don't know, nonchalant about all of it. There are plenty of people out there who are still in that mindset. Once they feel like they can go back to doing the things they do, then it's a breeding ground for the virus to spread. So we have a second wave, we have a third wave, and it's going to continue until we have that vaccine. And all we can do for ourselves, for our families, for our friends, for our colleagues, and for each other is just keep climbing that mountain every day and believe that there is a top somewhere and that together we are going to get there. That's all we can do. And I've accepted that, and hopefully you'll accept that too. And along the way, we're going to try to provide you with things to talk about that aren't the coronavirus, that aren't all the people who are dying, all the people who are sick, and all the hot spots throughout the country and throughout the world. And that's our way of contributing to this effort to get through it. Now, if there's football to be played, it's a lot easier for us to give you things to talk about. I haven't really given a lot of thought to how we get through doing football shows during the months of football season if there is no football. I'll worry about that when it happens. Because, again, our position isn't we're planning for football season. Our position is we're going to have a plan for every scenario. And if there is no football season, we'll find something to talk about. We'll find something to give you a diversion and a distraction from what's going on in the world. And we'll continue to do that. It's easy for now, though, because the draft is in 13 days. And we'll spend the next 2 weeks getting you ready for the draft. And we'll fully immerse in the draft and the aftermath of all the undrafted free agents. And then at some point in May, we may have to get a little creative. We may have to just try to interview as many people as we can and find out what people are doing as they work out on their own. But we'll figure it out, and we'll keep providing you with content that'll get you through this as we all climb that mountain 1 inch at a time and hopefully at some point get to the top. We'll see you next week with all new editions of PFT Live, Monday through Friday, PFT OT, PFT PM. And if you like PFT PM from the barn, maybe we'll try it again at some point down the road. Everybody have a good weekend. Stay safe, be strong, and we'll talk to you on Monday.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.